Great. Now we push on to diagramming adjective clauses. Adjective clauses begin with 1, a relative pronoun, or 2, an adverb. Let's look at some examples. The woman who wrote Sense and Sensibility was Jane Austen. Here we have an adjective clause that begins with a relative pronoun, who. Who wrote Sense and Sensibility? Who there being the kind of subject of its own dependent clause, wrote being the verb, but the relative pronoun connecting the adjective clause with the word woman. So this whole thing in brackets, who wrote Sense and Sensibility, is an adjective clause that's modifying the subject of the whole sentence, woman. Let's diagram these parts and see how it all relates. Everything outside the brackets get diagrammed like this. The woman was Jane Austen. Was is our linking verb there. Jane Austen, subject, complement to woman. Inside the brackets, who wrote Sense and Sensibility? Here we draw down a dotted line. This is the difference. We're not drawing pedestals with adjective clauses. We're drawing dotted lines that descend to a separate baseline. And the separate baseline, the dotted line, connects to the modified noun. So the woman, ... down to here, who wrote Sense and Sensibility. Now it's the same principle we used in our example a moment ago, where we were diagramming relative pronouns and noun clauses. That is, you're asking, if you were to substitute in another word for who there, say he, she, right, for Jane Austen, the woman, she wrote Sense and Sensibility. It'd be very obvious she would be the subject. Here you're just taking that relative pronoun and putting it in the place of the subject, who wrote Sense and Sensibility. So here with those relative pronouns, they go into the baseline structure that is the adjective clause. Here's a case of an adjective clause with an adverb. The part of John Adams, where they tar and feather that guy, deeply disturbs me. Where they tar and feather that guy, that's our adjective clause there. And you can see that a where initiates that adjective clause. Here's the whole sentence, part for part, color-coded. And let's go through first with everything outside the brackets. We have disturbs as the verb, part as the subject, and sundry other parts of speech. It goes like this. Part and subject, disturbs and verb, me is a direct object, deeply as an adverb modifying disturbs, the in John Adams. Here are two adjectival elements here, the and in John Adams. John Adams being a movie or a miniseries. Okay, now we handle the part inside. And remember, with the adjective clause, we're drawing a dotted line to a separate baseline. And here, the clause is telling us something about the subject, part. Which part? The part in John Adams where they tar and feather that guy. So this is going to go on a dotted line down beneath the subject. And here everything is diagrammed on the separate baseline. We can see that tar and feather here is actually a verb taken as one thing, tar and feather. And we see that the one doing the tar and feathering, they, that goes in the subject. There's a direct object, this is a transitive verb, so guy. That guy, that is modifying guy. And the word where there, that's our relative, our adverb. And just like the case with the noun clause, where we had a when descending from the verb, here we have something adverbial descending from the verb where. And it turns out that that adverb is our connection to the rest of the sentence. So we draw the dotted line here down underneath the second baseline, and we connect it with that word that ties back to the whole sentence. So where here, dotted line up to part. If you need to take a break and look at all the elements of the sentence, you can pause the video and do that now. Well, now we're diagramming the last kind of clause, the last kind of dependent clause we need to know for this week. So this is encouraging. Adverb clauses begin with subordinating conjunctions like since, because, if, when, etc. In this case, we will draw a dotted line to a separate baseline, just like we did with the adjective clause, but we will put this subordinating conjunction on the dotted line that is connecting the two baselines, instead of putting this conjunction, trying to put this conjunction on the baseline. Just like with compound sentences, we don't put the conjunction on the baseline, we put it on a dotted line connecting the two different baselines. Good. So if you read any Tolkien, you must read The Hobbit. Here is an if-then structured sentence, and this is a perfect example of an adverb clause. If you read any Tolkien, you must read The Hobbit. If you read any Tolkien, that if statement is our dependent adverb clause, and then the rest is the normal sentence. So if you color code everything, it looks like this. Inside the dependent clause, read, verb, you, subject, if, that's our subordinating conjunction. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Tolkien, to go back, Tolkien as direct object and any as modifier. This is the rest of the sentence here. Must read, must is a modal verb attached to read. That's our main verb. The sentence, and then you, subject, The Hobbit, direct object. So if we're just diagramming the stuff outside of the dependent clause, you must read The Hobbit. It looks like this, very simple. And then we turn to the stuff inside. And here I said just a moment ago, you draw a dotted line connecting to a separate baseline, and we put the subordinate conjunction on the dotted line. So it looks like this. If goes on the dotted line from verb to verb, right? Because an adverb clause modifies a verb. So we go draw the dotted line from verb to verb, and we put the rest of the material below. You read Tolkien any. That any answers the question, how many or how much Tolkien, any Tolkien. So you can pause the video if you like and take a look at this. Okay, we are really almost at the finish line. Now we are just going to put together these two concepts in the last lesson, the concept of a compound sentence, and then also the concept of a complex sentence, that which we learned in this lesson. And we're going to take a look at a sentence where we actually have both combined together. A compound complex sentence is a sentence with two independent clauses and one or more dependent clauses. So let's just try it. It's really, if you know how to do compound sentences, and then you know how to do noun clauses, adjective clauses, and adverb clauses, it should be no problem. It's just a larger sentence with all these elements, or some of these elements. So let's try diagramming one. Since Bartholomew knows French, he will read the play in the original language, and whoever else joins us can buy the English translation. Okay, seems formidable. We can do it. We notice, if we take the whole sentence and break it up into its parts, we have a dependent adverb clause here, since Bartholomew knows French, because that whole thing is answering a question that comes to us in the next clause. He will read the play in the original language. Under what conditions will he read the play in the original language? Since Bartholomew knows French. Or you might even actually put this under the why. Why will he read the play in the original language? Since Bartholomew knows French. So it does answer, you could think of it as under what circumstances, or why. Probably even more aptly, why. And then we have a dependent noun clause inside of the next indicative. So two indicatives. The second indicative is, and whoever else joins us can buy the English translation. And then there's a noun clause in there, whoever else joins us. And we see that that is a noun clause functioning as the subject of the second indicative sentence. Who can buy? Whoever else joins us can buy, the English translation. And then now we have it broken up into its parts. Let's just take it part by part. So we'll take the first indicative clause and we'll diagram that. Subject, he, verb will read, play, direct object, the, article adjective, modifier in the original. That's a prepositional phrase we'll see that is stemming from the verb. So let's look at it, rediagram it like this. He will read the play in the original language. Under what circumstances will he read the play in the original language? That's why it's adverbial right there. Good. Now we turn to the second indicative statement, the second independent clause. And whoever else joins us can buy the English translation. Whoever else joins us can buy the English translation. So first, let's do everything outside of that noun clause can buy the English translation. So we know that that is going to be descending because it's compound. It's going to be below this other structure here, connected by a dotted line with and. And the verb can buy goes in the verb slot. We see the translation is the direct object, so that takes the direct object slot. The and English are both modifiers modifying translation. They go on descending diagonal lines. And then we have our noun clause pedestal. So we turn to the material inside the brackets here. And we see that we have joins as the verb. We have whoever as the relative pronoun, which is, in this sentence, functioning as the subject. We have us as direct object and else as adjective. Else can be adverb, but it can also be an adjective, like in this case where we're saying which one or which ones, whoever else, that's which ones. So it looks like this right here, descending diagonal lines coming from whoever. Else is a tricky word, but it's one of those cases where we have to know the difference between adverbial and adjectival uses of a given word. Okay, now we're turning to our last part, and we really do have just one more part. That's this adverb clause that begins with the word since. We know that with the adverb clause, we always draw a dotted line to a separate baseline. We'll put that over here on the right and put since on the dotted line because it is a subordinating conjunction for the adverb clause. The rest of the clause is really quite simple. Knows is the verb, Bartholomew is the subject, and French is the direct object. So it looks like that. It's really that simple when you break down every part. Now it's just a matter of breaking down the parts correctly. But when you can do this kind of thing, you can celebrate because you have arrived. Sum it all up, it's a lot. Simple sentence, one independent clause. Complex sentences, one independent plus one or more dependent. And then compound sentence, two independent. Compound complex, two independent plus one or more dependents. There are three types of dependent clauses: noun clauses, adjective clauses, and adverb clauses. And they function as, respectively, nouns, adjectives modifying nouns, and adverbs modifying verbs. So that's what we need to know for the next time, and be ready to diagram.